Okay. All right. Hello there, my friends. Looks like we still have a couple people in the waiting room getting in here. So give me 1 second to try to get everybody let in. But I do show that it is 6 o'clock. So we will go ahead and get started. Okay. Can everybody hear me okay? I was testing out my audio and I was having some issues. Are we good?
Yep, you're good.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, a couple more people. Sorry, a couple more people coming in. All right. First thing, I did want to let you know that I do have the first and second writing assignment now graded. I have gotten a couple of emails that I did want to address where people were not seeing all the feedback that I was leaving for them. And so please note there are two places on your graded work to go in and look at feedback. The first one is in the actual text of your paper, where I've maybe left some annotation like comments. But where you really want to go is over on the right-hand side of your document, where I try really hard to leave you some strengths, like what I think are some really, really good, solid points of your essay. And then I also try to leave you like specific tips for improvement. And so that is where, if you are going to be revising to earn a higher grade, that's what you're going to spend the majority of your time working through, right? Again, not the little things that are in the text, like the annotations, but over on the right hand side where I've given you like paragraphs of information, indicating what the strengths of your assignment were and then what needs a little bit of work. And so make sure you're reading through all that feedback. Again, I had several people say that they had only seen one or two comments, but I promise I'm leaving a lot more over there in that side margin. So just make sure that you are checking that out, because that information should give you plenty to go back and revise. If it's not, let me know. But I do think some people were missing all of that feedback that was on the right-hand side over underneath the scoring guide. So make sure you check that out. And if you don't understand that, you can always conference with me, or you can take that feedback to the writing lab and they can help you as well. A lot of places to go if you are struggling with the feedback that I've given you. Okay. All right. Looks like, man, we still have a couple more people probably getting ready to hop on, but I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Once I share my screen, though, it is very hard for me to see who comes in the waiting room. So just kind of a plug there that if you ever come on late, just know you might be sitting in the waiting room for a little bit, because once I'm sharing my screen, then my waiting room does go away over here on the right-hand side. Okay. But let's go ahead and share the screen here and talk through the agenda for tonight. We'll go ahead and get rolling. Not sure how many of you are planning. What is going on with my screen here? Oh, hold on. There we go. You're seeing my screensaver. Not sure how many of you are planning on watching the debate tonight, but I'm going to try my best to get you out of here so that you can watch at least some of that. I know that it starts at 8 p.m., and so we'll do our best here. So let me scroll down. Today is September 10th. Okay. You hopefully, and no need to confess here if you don't, but the goal for today was to have 2 full pages of your literacy narrative essay typed out. Could be 2 very rough pages, totally fine. And you also completed that narrative planning. The narrative planning was to help you formulate what you're going to write your literacy narrative about. So today I want to get into a little more specifics about narrative writing, right? And what does good narrative writing look like? Okay, well, the first thing we're going to dig into here is this how to write a narrative essay. It's not a long article. It won't take you super long. I am going to have you take some notes over that so we can discuss. And then, and you're gonna have to bear with me. I am not a great big lecture teacher, but I do want to talk through some basic formatting things if you're going to use dialogue, right? And dialogue can do a lot for your narrative story. It can advance the plot, can give us more information about the people within your story. And I think for some of you, it's going to be a really good way to vary your story. Okay. Then we'll take a look at a published narrative and kind of how they start that, like as an attention getter. And so we'll talk about some things there. Then we'll spend about the last hour, maybe a little more of class, sharing our first 2 pages that we typed and figuring out where to go from here, right? We're going to call that writing workshop, and I'll detail specifically what that's going to look like. But I will have you work with your own paper first and do some things with your own paper during that writing workshop time. Then I'll have you get in some small groups and do some more sharing. Again, the more eyes that get on your paper, though, the more likely you're going to catch things and the better ideas you're going to get. And so I know at first that can be kind of uncomfortable, but I really want you to stick that out because I think in the end, your paper will really benefit from that. Okay, so the first thing here on the calendar, how to write a narrative essay, right? Knowing that you have already written 2 pages of your literacy narrative, here are some things, though, that I think we need to slow down. We've got to slow down to go fast, if that makes sense. And I want to give you some time to read through this document, How to Write a Narrative Essay, a step-by-step guide. I think this article does a really good job of talking about different things that are important as far as narrative writing goes. And I do want you, if you are able, to watch this video, What is the Story? It's interesting. I think it will kind of, if nothing else, it's going to spark your attention. And then it just talks through, like, if you're responding to a prompt, right? How successful are you? Do you consider yourself spiritual? Like some different ideas of writing there. But then what I really like here is what it talks about, what makes a good narrative essay. How do I know if my story that I've written about my literacy experience, how do I know if it's good, right? What makes it good? And I want you to be able to articulate what does make a good narrative essay, okay? And so it does talk about the structure down towards the end, and you can stop right here. You don't need to read what is a video essay. So you can stop right here after pro tip. Okay, so it won't take you super long to read through this and watch that video. What is the video like? I can't remember how long the video is. Hold on, let me check that before I get too wild and crazy with my time here. 2 minutes. Yeah, 2 minutes. So super short. So I'm going to get the link for this article for us to read. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and come back here. In the chat, I'm going to put the link to this. Okay, and what I would like for you to do as you're reading this brief article and watching that 2-minute clip, I want you to jot down notes, right? What are your big takeaways? What are things you want to remember as we complete your literacy narrative coming up, okay? So be thinking about that as you're reading that article. Let that guide you. You can take notes in your notebook. You can take notes electronically on your computer if you want. But I do want you, some other people just came in, so let me re-put that link. Okay, so I want you to read this quick article here on how to write a narrative essay. Watch that video at the top, and then let's meet back to discuss. So it is 6:07. So let's meet back at 6:20. Okay, let's meet back at 6:20, ready to discuss. All right, my friends, I show that it is 6:20, so we'll all come back together here. Short little writing, or not writing, a short little reading assignment there about what is narrative writing. But I think it does give some pretty good tips. And I especially like that video about what is story, right? What does story do and the power of storytelling, right? And what it means to write a good story and how passion and theme and how all of those things come together. It says story is a metaphor for life. And I don't know that it's a metaphor, right? Story is life, especially when you're writing about your own experiences. And in this case, writing about something related to literacy that has shaped you positively or negatively in your own life. And so I'm going to keep this fairly quick. Like I said, I really want to focus tonight on some writing workshop things with what you have written so far. So I'm going to very quickly get you into some smaller groups to chat about what you wrote down, what you want to remember about narrative writing for that from that short little text, and then we'll share out. So let me quickly get us into some breakout rooms. Again, we're not going to go very long. I am going to try to get you out of here so that you can watch the debate tonight. That does start at 8 p.m. So I'll try to keep us moving along pretty quickly tonight. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to put you in some breakout rooms. I want you to talk about, okay, be accountable for yourself. And I want you to make sure you share what you wrote down as being important, what things you want to remember from that reading assignment. Okay. You should be getting an invite to a breakout room now. If you will go ahead and join and quickly start talking about the article, then we'll come back together.
Like what the conflict was going to be, because I was like, it's not conflicting enough to be like, oh, I just didn't really like reading. But that kind of helped. It's the because is the crux.
Very good. Just wanted to say that. Very good.
How like the beginning of the narrative should start with like a brief commentary on the central theme. Are you guys doing that, or are you just doing like a are you just starting right in with the story?
I started mine with like a little introduction, and then I kind of went into my story.
Yes,
Okay.
I agree. It was kind of like a build up for me. So an introduction and then, did the beginning, middle, and end kind of if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
How are you doing yours?
I just started like right as it like
I also like the part where it kind of breaks down uh how did it call it? Sorry, y'all. I'm struggling with my words today, but when it puts down like what your first paragraph should consist of and the body paragraphs and like how to really like lay out your essay. I took notes on that because I kind of get lost in writing. I feel like a lot of times I write an essay and it'll get scattered around like my point. And so I like the part where it kind of directs you into how to organize your thoughts into an essay.
Yeah, so you can be able to like stay on topic so your thoughts will flow as you write.
Yeah, for sure. It helps me. That part helps me a lot, especially in the little articles that we read.
For me also like because whenever I write like a narrative essay, like whenever I wrote my narrative essay, I was a little bit focusing probably like about my life specifically when I should also write something about like more about my role model because me having a role model is what really got me to where I really want to be. So I feel like I should include a model more on the essay that I'm writing.
Right. And like how your role model like reflects onto you and how the also said in the article like how the topic that you chose reflects like your personal growth with whatever you experienced.
Yeah, you're correct.
So did you guys take any examples from like any other writings and incorporate that into your writing, or you just kind of like
All right, I think we have just a couple more folks coming in from the breakout room. Before I move on, I just saw somebody's name pop up that I didn't have on my attendance. Caitlin Nevels, are you here? It looks like you are. Are you here, Caitlin?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yep, I got you. Very good. Thank you. What about Elena Sanchez? I didn't get Elena either. I'll check my email. She might have sent me some. Okay. I loved eavesdropping on your conversations. You probably saw my little picture pop up there as I was listening in. More than anything, I just love the informal conversations where you're asking each other questions and you're like, okay, how did you start yours? Did you start like that with a theme, or did you like try to answer a prompt, or did you start right into your story? And some people were like, well, I started with kind of an introduction. I don't know. I think those those conversations are invaluable in this particular process. And that's what makes writing fun. You get to make some personal choices, some style liberties with how you write your narrative essay. But I do feel like that article provided, I don't know, I think if you are just starting out and you're struggling, I think some of those tips I think are very valuable in kind of helping you organize your thoughts and like how you might structure an essay of this to get started. So somebody be brave and unmute. Of course, I see the chat down there. Of course, somebody be brave, unmute. Tell us what you talked about in your group, or what you feel is important, or something you want to remember as we're moving forward writing the rest of your essay.
Well, for me, what I learned is about the point of view. So what I did using the point of view, I there's some people that I know that went through the same thing and playing the same sports, because my narrative is gonna be about like my sport life mainly. So what I use as a point of view, I talked to them, like it was, I don't know if it would be like a podcast or something, but I talked to them, got their point of view of their life and what they did to get where they want to be, their struggles and everything. So hopefully the ideas that they gave me and I get to rewatch like the podcast, whatever I get from them, that could probably help me out throughout my essay.
I love that. Yes. And podcasts have an interesting way of telling stories. And so I do think that is kind of a unique and interesting into how to write a story about a literacy experience that you have had. Yes. I love that. Very good. Okay. Somebody else.
Me personally, I feel like reading that narrative kind of like helps me like figure out how I can organize everything, because I feel like that's when I'm struggling. Like I have what I'm writing about, everything like that. But I feel like I just need a little bit more guidance, making sure I'm using more examples and going into debt. And I really do feel like reading over those has some key pointers that could really stand out to be there. Just how it teaches you to organize your thoughts, and pretty much organize your paragraphs so then they all end up flowing together. When you circle back to the end about the beginning, it just kind of helps you flow a little bit better. So those are very helpful tips when it comes to writing.
Yes, thank you for sharing. Yeah, bringing the essay full circle is going to be key in a narrative, right? Like it spoke about in the article, right? Just showing growth, right, or maturation in the process. And I heard somebody, as I was eavesdropping on one of the groups, I can't remember which one, but I heard a really good conversation about. Somebody said, "Well, I'm really worried that my story doesn't have enough conflict," and so I'm going to try to ease some anxiety here around that, because it doesn't have to be like, some super big conflict. It can simply be that you didn't like to read. Or it can simply be that, some crazy English teacher, hopefully not me, but or some crazy English teacher that you had in your academic career maybe got onto you for the way you were speaking, right? And made you feel, inferior or not smart, and about how that really changed how you thought about speaking and maybe then reading and writing. It doesn't have to be some like huge, man versus man conflict or some huge internal struggle. It could be something, and I don't want to say simple because I think this is a very nuanced issue, right? It could be something as simple though as you being like, no, I really didn't like to read, or I really didn't ever want to read chapter books. My youngest daughter right now is in that phase. She loves graphic novels, and her teacher the other day, and I love her teacher, by the way, but her teacher was like, Brinley, you need to read chapter books, not graphic novels. And she came home and was devastated, right? That her teacher didn't feel like graphic novels were appropriate. And she's like, but that's what I want to read. And so that alone could be enough conflict, maybe, in 15 years or whatever, when Brinley's in college, maybe that's going to be her literacy narrative, right? Where she talks about how her teacher like crushed her because she said that she needed to read chapter books instead of graphic novels. Again, so it doesn't have to be some over the top huge conflict going on, right? It can literally be something as simple as, growing up, I, loved to write until bam, this happened. And then I hated writing. Or, here's the teacher that changed all of my views about reading and writing. So it could be a positive story too. So just kind of try to ease some anxiety about that part. Because I know I kind of feel that way too when I'm writing narrative writing. Like I don't have a huge conflict. Sometimes it's just, the growth process that you're going through when you're learning to, I don't know, when you're growing up, right? All right. Like I said, I'm going to keep us moving tonight. So I'm going to move us on to the next item. in the agenda. And this is where, and this, I have to be honest, it's not super exciting, but it's extremely important information for you if you choose to use dialogue in your literacy narrative. It is imperative that you do it correctly. And so I guess I'm going to call this a lecture. I'm not a huge lecture-based teacher. I really like a lot of discussion and sharing and reading and really digging in, but I do need to cover these slides with you. And these slides are, of course, linked on the calendar. So if for some reason, if you don't get something handwritten down that you needed, or if you need your own copy of these slides, they are linked on the calendar. So I'm going to share my screen to pull up the slides. And if you just want to sit and listen, you can, or if you want to take notes as I am going through these slides, you can do that. Again, these slides are linked on the calendar, and I'm going to show you where they are linked right now. Okay, where it says dialogue formatting. Okay, this is a copy of all the slides that I'm getting ready to share with you. Again, I do think it's important that we talk about dialogue formatting in case you decide to use dialogue in your paper. Okay, and so I do think dialogue serves a strong purpose in narrative writing. But I want, again, to ease your mind, you don't have to use dialogue. Okay, so don't panic if this is not something you're comfortable with, or if it's something you just don't want to try. Okay, but also too, if you want to see more examples of dialogue, you can simply Google examples of dialogue, or if you have any, fiction or nonfiction books at home, you just want to open up. You're going to see how they do indents, right? How they tab, where the lines start, where the lines end, where commas and periods go. Usually when we're reading, it's not something that we're conscious of a lot of the times, but there are very specific rules that go into using dialogue. And so here, I'm getting ready to dive into how to make your personal narrative speak to us, right? You're trying to make your story come to life. It's something I tell students when they're writing like college application essays, or trying to write for an essay contest. I always say it's not necessarily the conflict that is going to be the turning point in deciding like winner from loser in an essay competition. A lot of times it's going to be style, right? And how well you can wow the reader with style. And I think dialogue does a lot of that in a narrative essay. So what does dialogue do? It creates vivid characters. It helps the reader picture what this particular person is like. Okay, it also advances the plot, right? You're trying to start here and trying to get to this point here. And you can do that through the characters talking back and forth. Obviously, in your literacy narrative, the characters are probably going to be you and someone else having a conversation back and forth. Okay, dialogue offers information. Okay, instead of us just reading about what someone says, right? If we see it in format of a dialogue and a conversation, it makes it more real. It does engage readers more so than like a third person omniscient narrator would. Sorry. All right. Okay, let's talk about conventions. And I'm going to pull all these up here. I went too far. Okay, dialogue conventions. We are going to place spoken words and quotation marks. Okay, that's pretty standard. So if you're putting in a conversation that say you were having with a teacher, I don't know, when you were in 4th grade, right? You're going to put what you say to the teacher in quotes, and you're going to put what the teacher says to you in quotes. Okay, now a question I get a lot of times, well, Ms. Humphreys, what if I don't remember exactly what our conversation was? It's okay. You can make that up. Okay. I'm just going to be honest with you. Like, I don't know. I wasn't there in your 4th grade classroom or wherever you were at having this conversation. So just try to get it as close as you can to what the actual spoken words were. Okay. You're going to separate unspoken words. We call these taglines from spoken words with commas. So like my teacher exclaimed, comma, then start the quote. Okay. We're going to place end punctuation marks inside of the quote. And then start a new paragraph every time the speaker switches. So if I'm including a conversation between me and a teacher, every time I speak, it's going to be a new paragraph. Every time she or he speaks, it's going to be a new paragraph. Okay. And so here's an example on my screen of what that looks like. Okay. You'll notice here the indent before glancing. Okay. Glancing behind him, Josh whispered, comma, start the quote, we've got to go. Okay, then you notice we enter down, we tab back over. I'm not finished, comma, inside the quote. Justine snapped as she slowly raised a spoonful of whipped cream, right? Now we come back down, enter, we tab over again because we've got a new speaker. We're back to Josh. Do what you'd like, Josh said as he stood, but either we leave now or we leave after we wash dishes for the next 3 hours. Okay, so just pay careful attention to how that dialogue is formatted, right? Again, every time a new speaker speaks, we tab over, right? And you'll notice the quotation marks and the commas where they are placed. Okay, again, it advances the plot without just telling, right? We can see, it feels like we're a part of the story. We're a part of the conversation. Makes it more engaging for us. Okay, some dialogue style considerations. And these are big ones. We want to vary the taglines. Okay, and I'm going to go back and show you what I mean by that. Vary placement of taglines. So what I mean by varying taglines is you'll notice here, Josh whispered, Justine snapped, Josh said, right? These are all pretty similar. We want to try to vary them. We don't want to have Josh said, we have to go. Justine said, I'm not finished. Josh said, right? We want to vary that as much as we possibly can. Okay. And use, please, for the love of all that is good in this world, use synonyms for the word said when appropriate, but don't overdo it. But you would be amazed at the number of people who wrote so-and-so said, like 20 times in their paper. Try to use synonyms when we can, but we're not going to overdo that. Okay, and then we can eliminate taglines altogether when appropriate. Okay, and so here's some examples. Use natural speech, like contractions and fillers, but don't overdo it, right? Don't make your language so formal if you're including dialogue, because we all know that when we're having conversations with friends, or even, your fourth grade self having a conversation with a teacher, you're not using big, dictionary or thesaurus approved words. Okay, we know you're going to use some contractions and some filler phrases. I put here, use subtext. The truth often remains unspoken. And then I gave an example here. She fought back tears and replied, right? If she's fighting back tears, we know that she's upset. It says, you really hurt me. I thought you loved my lasagna, and now you're telling me you don't. Now I lack the confidence to cook for you. And then here's a revised version. She blinked. Silence. Oh, we should have ordered pizza. Okay, both of these about the same thing, right? Here we have way more words, right? They're telling us the story. Down here, we're kind of seeing the story, right? So instead of saying she's fighting back tears when she replies, right? And I don't know, some people speak like this, but I don't know. You really hurt me. I thought you loved my lasagna. Down here, she doesn't have to say, you really hurt me, right? We know she blinked in silence. Oh, we should have ordered pizza, right? You can just feel it without having all of these words and all this information up here in the revised version. You can just feel, you can feel the energy or feel the vibe. That's what my high school students like to say all the time. Okay, some things that I would do if you decide to use dialogue. Again, not required. I encourage you to, but not required. But make sure you read the dialogue aloud, right? I know that sounds corny, and I know that that's probably not a norm for most people, but I really want you to try it. So if you include dialogue, I want you to read it out loud. Are all the spoken words necessary? And do the taglines add to the conversation? Okay, if the taglines don't add to it, take them out. Okay, so here's an example, and then I gave you a revised version. The example a student had written for me a couple years ago. He turned to look at her, shrugged his shoulders, and said, actually, this is up to you. I think it's you who has to make a decision here, one way or another. It's your choice, really. Okay, a lot of redundancy there, right? This is up to you. You are the one who has to make the decision. It's your choice, right? Very, very redundant, when really we could shorten it to just this. He shrugged. Your choice. Ooh, much better, right? Like you can feel the narrative really kicking in here. And we've condensed this, much more concise, advances the plot much better. We get rid of that repetitiveness and that redundancy, and still carries the same meaning. Okay, and that was just my citations. We're not actually going to do my little activity here, but so this is an activity. Again, I'm trying to get you out to watch the debate tonight, but if we were going to take more time, I would have you practice writing dialogue for these pictures here. This one reminds me of my two kids, not going to lie to you. A little officiating here, the official giving the soccer player a red card, right, which is the sign to exit the game. He's done something really bad. And here we've got some students that are either taking a test or writing something, and then some kind of a gift here, and she's super excited. So But again, because of time constraints tonight, we're not going to do that activity. I know that makes everybody very sad, but all right. Okay. The next thing we're going to do, now that we've talked a little bit about dialogue, I do want you to be thinking about how you would use dialogue perhaps in your essay. And then I'm going to give you a second here in a little bit to go back and look at your paper. What I want to do now, though, is as it says here, I wanted to show you something, a published piece of writing from a book that I read not too long ago, because I love how it describes the setting and the place. And so when we're talking about narrative writing, I really want you to be thinking about sensory details, setting up the story. How are you going to frame it? Like I said, I heard some people mentioning that they had started with kind of a brief introduction. Other people were like, well, I jumped right into the middle of my story. And you have the artistic freedom, right? The liberty to set up your essay however you want. But I want to share with you this published piece of writing here because of how well it establishes the setting. And I think when you're talking about narrative writing, right, we need to be familiar with the setting, right? Where's this story taking place? Really building in those sensory details, trying to bring in character dialogue, and really making the story come to life. One of the number one issues that students come to me with the literacy narrative is they say, Humphreys, it's too short. I'm not meeting the minimum page requirement. And I always say, it doesn't have to be some elaborate long story, but you are going to have to build in some details, right? One place or one way you could do that is by detailing the setting, right? Really talking about the location that your story is taking place. Maybe it's taking place at your grandmother's house when you are learning to read. Maybe it's taking place at your school, like I said, with like a particular teacher. And so you're really going to talk about, the setting of the school and what it looks like and how it influences you and influences the story. Some things to think about there. So what I'm going to put in the chat right now, let me get to it here. I'm going to put a link to this. This is the first couple of pages from a book. Some of you might have read it, called Malibu Rising. But it does such a beautiful job of setting up the setting and setting up the story. And so what I want you to do, I want you to take about 10 minutes here and just read it. First off, I really feel like it is beautiful writing. I think you're going to appreciate how beautiful the sensory details are, how descriptive it is. Some of you might decide you even want to read the book after reading these first 3 pages. But that's what good narrative writing does. Really hooks you and draws you in. So take about 10 minutes here. It is, 6:48. So let's meet back at 7. Okay, that gives you maybe a little bit of time to use the restroom too. But read those first few pages and just note things that stand out to you, how you're feeling about it, and be thinking about how could you do something similar in your writing. Okay, so let's meet back at 7, ready to discuss. Okay. And so that should give you a little bit of time. It's short to maybe use the restroom and take a quick break. Okay. So we'll meet back here at 7. All right. If you could start making your way back. Oh, that's always one of my favorite pieces to start off with for so many reasons. But have any of you read Malibu Rising, the book? Oh, if you have not, it's a pretty good read. I don't know. Kind of a beach read if you want to call it that, but I don't know, there's no such thing as a bad book, right? You just have to find the right books for you. And but I love how the first like 5 pages of that book really hook you in. The author does a fantastic job of describing the setting, right? Telling us all about Malibu, bringing in that hook of like, Malibu's history of burning. But then those last couple of lines that transition into the rest of the story, right? Where you learn about, this party that gets really wild, and how one person leaves and, essentially burns it all down. But it's a very good book, very well written, lots of descriptive detail. And again, definitely gets you into the conflict, and the conflict there is big, obviously. But I do think there are some ways that even with your narrative, and even with a smaller type of conflict, like, not liking to read or not liking to write or vice versa, or maybe you're writing about how you didn't like it and then you overcame that through a good teacher, or so many different things there, right? But you could definitely pull in kind of some buildup to your narrative essay if you want by using a lot of description, sensory details, building up to what your story is going to be about. So what you just read, though, a great example of describing the setting using sensory details, but also a great model of how do you hook your reader. How do you get your reader interested in what you're writing about? How do you get them interested in your story in general? Sometimes you have to have that cliffhanger at first, right? That really hooks the reader and then transitions them into the rest of your paper. And that hook could be something to do with the theme, right, of literacy, in some way, shape, or form, and some of those guiding questions that we addressed more towards the beginning of this unit. And in chapter 10, the literacy narrative unit, if you need to reference back to that. Great way to start your literacy narrative. Okay. So what I want to do next, before we jump into any kind of peer editing, I do want to give you a chance with your paper to pull up your paper. And so you can minimize the Zoom here if you need to, but I want you to look through your own essay, and I want you to find instances where you feel like you could do some of these things, right? I want you to see, is there a place that you have, where you've already written that you feel like you could go back and insert some dialogue? Okay, if there is, if you feel like you can use that dialogue to really advance the plot or to give us more description about somebody in your story, I don't want you to actually like write the dialogue right now, but like give yourself a little note of where you think you can come back and add in some dialogue here in a little bit. I also want you to take a look at where do you already have some examples of strong sensory details and description, and where do you feel like you could go back and add in some more? Where can you go back and make it a little more like Malibu Rising? Where you have some very descriptive sensory details, maybe some places where you could go back and describe the setting more, or maybe where they describe the characters more or the history of the place. But I really want you to focus on, again, when you go back and look at your paper right now, where could you add some dialogue, right? And let's make a little note there if you feel like there's some places where you can add some dialogue. And then where do you already have good sensory details? And where could you add more sensory details? So I'm going to put all those directions in the chat, and I'm going to have you take about 10 minutes with your own paper, okay, to do those things. Okay, so first thing, where can you add dialogue? Okay. 2, where do you already have good sensory details? And 3, where could you add more? Okay, so with your own paper, I want you to take a little bit of time to work through those three things. Where could you possibly add some dialogue? Where do you already have good sensory details? And where could you add more sensory details? So let's meet back at 7:15 for our next step, okay? So right now, just working with your paper on those 3 things. And then we'll meet back to move into some writing workshop style of class from there on. Okay. So I'm going to mute here and I'll see you back about 7:15. Again, where can you add dialogue? Where do you already have good sensory details? And where could you add more sensory details? All right, my friends. Hopefully that gave you enough time to do those three things to figure out if there are any spots where you could add some dialogue. Were there spots, or I asked you to identify spots where you had good sensory details already, and then to identify a few spots where maybe you could add more sensory details to your narrative. Okay. The next step in this process here is where you're going to share what you have written so far up to this point, right, in some small groups to get some feedback. So I want to first, there are a couple of ways in which you can share your paper. I'm going to go in right now and check some things on my end. Okay, so when you get into your breakout rooms, and these are going to be super small groups, that way you can really get into what you have written and you can really ask questions and get feedback. And so there are several ways you can do that. You can share your document via the cloud. Okay, so you can get your group member's email address. You can send it to them via email, or if they're using a Google Doc, you can get a share link and you can share the link with them via the chat feature, or kind of the slow, not best option, but you can share your screen. I just double checked to make sure that I have enabled to where multiple people can share. So you could share your screen while everybody reads through it and then kind of have a conversation. Here's the thing, right? We're always going to be kind. But also I want to acknowledge that it's okay that everybody might be in a different spot, right? Some people might struggle to get started with the writing process, whereas others maybe just sat down and like hammered, right, and may have a lot done. Either way, it's fine. Okay, I don't want you to feel out of place for any reason, right? If you have too much, not enough, or if you've got a lot of questions, all of those things are okay. Especially with this type of paper, you're writing a story, right? And so for some people, I think that's a little more natural than others. And it's okay if your stories look different, right? If you started in the middle of the action where somebody else has a big lead up, that's okay. Lots of different things are acceptable for this particular literacy narrative assignment. And so I want you to be brave. I want you to share what you have written, even if that's just a little bit. Maybe you didn't get a lot done, or maybe you wrote a whole lot and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't want everybody to have to spend the time reading this. It's okay. I really want you to get feedback on what you have written from some of your peers. And then after they read it, I really want you to have an organic conversation. Okay. Here's what I'm still struggling with. What did you guys think about, that first, 3 or 4 sentences? Or what did you think about, or what do you think about me adding some dialogue here? And, you point out and kind of talk through that with your group. But this is a chance for you to have some organic conversations with classmates. I think this is a little bit easier to do if we were in person, like in the physical classroom, but still very much possible to do well in breakout rooms here in our virtual space. And so be brave, share what you have written, and then be even braver to have real, open, honest conversations about what you have written, questions you want your group to help you with, right? I always say, ask for the feedback that you want, right? Don't just say, well, is it good or is it bad, right? Be specific, like, hey, I really tried to put some dialogue in here just a minute ago. What do you guys think? Did I format it correctly? Does it not fit? Or what did you think about these sensory details in the third paragraph? Are they good? Is it too much? Is it not enough? Right? Just really be courageous to ask questions. Okay. All right. You're going to get an invitation here to join breakout rooms. Like I said, they will be smaller rooms so that everyone has a chance to hopefully have some more, or to have smaller conversations. Hold on. I'm not sure what's going on with that. Give me a second here. What is going on? Bear with me. Okay, you should get that invitation now to join breakout rooms to have your conversations, okay? Oh, my kids are so loud upstairs. Okay, everybody getting that breakout room invite? There we go. Good. We're getting everybody in. There we go. I can't see here. My breakout room thing's in the way. There we go. And Tanzania.
Is
So for sending a link, if I just send the link, will it automatically give you guys access?
I think so. If you set it to, are you doing it on what like are you using?
I'm using Google Docs.
Yeah, I think you just should be able to do everyone with link can access, like can view it.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
because if you send the link and
Share with
we
others.
get into, yeah, we can see it.
Okay, anyone with link. Got it. Okay, got it. All right, I just sent it to you both. Like I didn't put anything in MLA format yet or anything. I just started writing stuff down and I'm just gonna put it all. Oh, I think I sent the wrong one. I
Oh,
think I
that's
might
a
have sent.
response.
Yeah, I sent the wrong one. Hold on 1 second. Shoot. Okay. I got it. So sorry.
You're good.
Okay. Anyone with link? Okay. That should be it. You guys get it?
Yes, I just put it up.
Okay.
Okay, did that work? Julie, I'm just checking.
Huh?
Did his link work? Were you able to use that?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, just making sure. Okay.
Let me know if I'm scrolling too fast, ladies.
Okay. You can scroll more if you want.
Okay.
At least like 3 to 4 pages and just like trying to I think like for me, like she gave me a lot of good feedback, like on the other writing paper that we had. And like I get what she's saying. I get it. I feel like when she's like, you did good on this, but you need to incorporate this idea. And I'm just like really trying to stick with what she told me just to take that feedback and try to put it into this paper. So I think maybe that'll be like a good thing, like whatever feedback that she gave you guys back on that other paper, just to kind of like try to incorporate those things in this paper too. Um, to like say like, you know, all those tips that she gave us and like those ways to expand your thinking, like did you use those? Did you incorporate that?
Yeah, I agree 100% on that because I totally was just reading over my paper and looked back on one of the others and just noticed that I had some of the things she actually corrected me on in the paper I was writing. So I'm just trying to stray away from doing the same mistake twice.
I know, I feel like it's so hard. I feel like it's so hard. Like I'm like, oh my gosh, but I'm trying to expand this, but I'm
It
just trying
really
to
is.
be like, I'm trying to expand this. I'm trying to think more critical, give more examples, like how she said, use those dialogues. Just, you know, just to make it more of a story and, you know, grasp that attention of the reader.
Yeah.
the fact that we do have the option to go back after getting the feedback because the feedback do be very, it be in detail. So it's very good, right? So it's always something to
Yeah.
take away from that. And having
Sorry, Professor. We kind of went through ours pretty quickly and gave each other some feedback on adding adding some dialogue in certain points, and so kind of working on it now.
Okay, that's perfect. Yep, that's what I needed to know. You guys were my last group I was coming to, so
Awesome.
perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hi, Professor Humphreys.
Hey, how's it going in this group?
So
It's going good.
Okay.
yeah, it's good. It's doing great. Like I was telling him that I haven't finished yet, but I was explaining my ideas and what I want to put it in my paper. So has been great. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, we're gonna wrap up here in the next couple of minutes, okay? And then I'll bring everybody back.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Turn off the lights. All right, it looks like we are close to having everybody back here. I hope I tried not to interrupt. I tried to give some of my groups only had two folks, some of our groups had three. And so I tried to give you enough time to have conversations for each one of you to get some feedback about your writing. I heard lots of great conversations, right? Just giving feedback and thinking about where to add dialogue, where to add detail. And a lot of you just kind of questioning, okay, where do I go next? And so I think those were some valuable conversations to be had. What I want to do next, I'm going to share maybe my screen with you. If I hit the right buttons, I will share my screen with you so we can go back and talk about the calendar if I can get everything pulled up. Sorry, I'm going through 6,000 screens here. All right, like I said, I am keenly aware that tonight is the big debate at 8 o'clock for those of you getting ready to watch it, the presidential debate. And so I want to make sure that I'm going to try to honor that and give you time to watch that if you want. I'm not pressuring you either way. I just want to make sure that you have time to do that if you want to. Okay. So here is going to be the homework for this week. As it says here in yellow, obviously you're going to finish your rough draft of your literacy narrative. I would love for you to finish that as soon as possible so that you can visit the writing lab to get feedback. And keep in mind with the writing lab, as it says on here, you can join their virtual Zoom session during their regular business hours, and their hours are listed here. Or you can email them a PDF copy of your essay. It does take up to 48 hours though to get feedback. So if you're going to do that, you probably need to be emailing them, oh gosh, by Thursday morning at the latest to get feedback before the due date. But I really do want you to try to utilize their services to get some feedback before you submit your final draft, just to get another set of eyes on your paper. If for some reason you just can't make the writing lab work, that's okay. But I think it will make your writing that much stronger just to have somebody else look at it. So after you get feedback from the writing lab, I want you to make revisions and polish, make sure that it's as good as it can possibly be. Then you're going to submit your final draft by 11:59 p.m. this Sunday, September 15th. And if you can't make that deadline, make sure at the latest you have it submitted before class on Tuesday. So that does give you, if you need it, if the writing lab is a little slower getting back to you, again, make sure that that is submitted before class starts on Tuesday. Hopefully you can get it in Sunday night. That will give me a chance Monday night to start going through and start grading those and giving you feedback. But again, if you just can't make that, Tuesday will be the final submission deadline. Okay. So again, you are going to finish the rough draft. Okay. Check in with the writing lab, get some good feedback, make any additional revisions and polishing that you want to make. And then you're going to submit a final draft on Canvas by 11:59 p.m. Sunday night. Okay. What I'm going to do next, I'm going to quit sharing my screen here. And I'm going to stay on for just a little bit longer in case anyone has questions or concerns or needs to chat with me. Otherwise, I am going to let you go. That way, those of you wanting to watch the debate, you have that opportunity. Or if you would, as you're watching the debate, or if you prefer not to watch the debate, you have a solid hour of class time to work on your writing assignment, which is, I think, a good deal too. So I want you to have a great night. Enjoy the debate if you watch it, or happy writing time for you. Okay. Again, stay on if you have questions. I'll stay on for just a little bit longer before I sign off. Okay.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Hey, you too.
Have a good night,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Have a good
Have a good
night.
night.
Have a good night, guys.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
So I'm still here. I just have a question. So our homework is for us to submit what we did not submit, but what we already worked on, correct? But just revising it and polishing it and that was from our own, like our own story about reading and literacy from our perspective, correct?
Mm.
Okay.
Yes, and depending on, because I was looking at some drafts as you guys were in breakout rooms. For some folks, they only have about maybe half or a quarter of their essay completed. And so obviously they're going to be adding to it. Whereas other people had a whole completed draft and were ready to just polish and submit.
Yeah, and see, because mine was, I felt like after reading what I wrote, I was kind of all over the place, but it was like different transitions about it. Like I kind of started off with one place of how I remember like one of the first books I ever read, but it wasn't like I didn't continue to read throughout like my childhood until when I became a teenager. That's when I fell in love with reading again and how that was important to me as a mom and how it poured over into my kids. So I'm like, that's a lot. Like I'm kind of here and then I'm there and then I'm here. So I kind of got confused there, if that makes sense. I'm like, it's not just one story and one plot. It's like three different things going on.
And I think you could still probably have those things as long as we transition between them smoothly.
Okay.
Yeah, like, here's how it started and then transition to the next part and make it all into one story. I do think that's possible.
Okay. Well, thank you. And I will work on that and I will go from there.
Okay,
You
sounds
have a
good.
great night.
Hey, you too.
Bye.
I never see anybody's
Hi.
face. I love it.
I
Hey,
know.
like
If I'm
real people. Yes.
I had a couple questions.
Okay.
For our revisions of our like former essays, is there a deadline on that, or could I just do it like just before the class ends?
Yes, just before the class ends. The sooner the sooner the better for me, just so I can
Okay.
keep up with the grading. But literally though, I spend that last like week to week and a half of the semester really just locked in a room grading. So I mean, just as long as you get it in before the end of the class, totally fine.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then I actually kind of had the same question as Tantanya about my essay.
Okay.
I'm if my central theme seems to be like I had a teacher who she created a classroom environment, and she was an English teacher that made me like I didn't really have any friends, and she made me feel like just really welcome, and she had like a little reading nook.
I love that.
And so I read like all the books that she owned in her library, and I was kind of and then like it was like a few years later that I like it helped me like feel okay with who I was, and then like a few years later I made friends. So it's like kind of connected. And I was thinking of the central theme kind of being like through like the books I read and just like that feeling of comfort, it helped me like build connections with other people later on.
Yeah.
But I don't is that I don't know, it feels a little abstract, but I don't
No,
know.
I think it's great. No, I think what you described is a perfect story, right? Like you didn't feel comfortable at first, and then because of the classroom environment, you were drawn to reading, and then because of reading, right? Like that's kind of the turning point. Because of this newfound love of reading, right? You then learned, to branch out and made friends. Yeah, I think that's a great story.
Okay.
Yeah, I love that.
Okay. Cool. I will run with it then.
Okay, sounds great. I can't wait to read it.
Okay. Thank you so much.